Good afternoon, and thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Reaching Military Connected Students Through Purposeful Cyber Education Outreach. Military students face a unique set of circumstances related to education, and today's guests offer a diverse range of perspective and experiences involving military connected students. Today, they will be sharing some of their experience with us. And if you have any questions for our guests, please type your questions in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat throughout today's session, and we'll address these questions towards the end of the webinar in the last few minutes. So any questions for our guests, just add them to the chat, and we'll keep a log of them as we go. Today's guests include three outstanding individuals and some other guests that we are really excited to share with you today. First up is going to be a very special person to us. Most of these connections come thanks to our DSEC grant. We are part of a consortium with the DoD, and our first friend is a school liaison specialist, Raquel Labadie from Minot, North Dakota. Raquel, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you to talk about your experiences with military connected students.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be partnered up with Cyber.org. I've been a school liaison for 2 years. And as John mentioned, I work at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. And pretty much the entirety of my span of being a school liaison in Minot, I've been partnered with Cyber.org, and we've done some really cool programming with our after-school programs here on the installation and engaged with our schools. So the first thing I want to mention is, what is a school liaison? So my role in the military community, there is a school liaison assigned to every installation, every base. The military views K through 12 education as a quality of life issue, as a retention issue, and as a readiness issue. And so basically that means it's so important that we know that it's going to affect our active duty members' work performance, whether or not their children have adequate education in the K through 12 system. So it's really important, and it's so important that I have a job to support K through 12 needs for our military connected families. My position is threefold. So I work with our command, and I inform command about things that are happening in the school district, in the schools, and things that are affecting our military students that could affect the active duty members. I work with our families. So our military families are very transient. They move regularly, as we know. And so I need to help families as they transition from one school district to the next to make sure that they're able to graduate on time, they're able to participate in school sports, that their credits transfer. And that's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And also I work with our schools and our educators. And so I inform our educators in our community about military concerns. We'll talk with teachers about deployments. We'll talk with the school district about COVID restrictions and how that affects the students in our schools. And all of these different parts and pieces are what build the school liaison program, and each are equally important. So before I get started on some of the tidbits of information that I have, if you are an educator and you are not currently connected with your local school liaison, one of the places that you can get information on who to connect with in your local community is military1source.mil, and they have an education tab, and all of us are listed on there. So it doesn't matter the branch. If you are not next to a military installation, we are still going to support you, because we are here to support all of our military connected students. So myself, I'm in Minot, North Dakota. We have one other Air Force base, Grand Forks, that's nearby, but we have Guard families that are all mixed in throughout the state, and other nearby states. Montana will support families from there too. So if you're not sure who your school liaison is, you can find us online, but utilize this as a resource. So when we're talking about cyber education and ways to support our military students, the first thing that comes to mind to me is the fact that we have a very transient population. And so when we talk about education with military students, that has to be one of those first considerations that we think about. Our students move. We try to, we call it PCS season, and it somewhat mirrors the school calendar, but we can't guarantee when students are going to move into a district and out of a district. So one of the number one things that I can recommend educators that work in cyber education is to be very detailed in the course descriptions that you provide to your students and the syllabus. So when a student moves from one school district to the next, these courses aren't all going to be titled the same things. They're not going to all cover the same content. So sometimes we struggle with translating what we did at this school district in this state or in, overseas, and what we're doing in the current school district. So as an educator, if you're able to be descriptive in the course description and in the syllabus, if you're able to, make sure your students even know what textbook that they're using, all of that information is useful at the next school district when we're trying to translate what they did in your class to what they're going to be doing and where to place them at the next location. So I've seen certificates being signed if they're learning a specific topic or they've accomplished a specific skill. I've seen signed letters from teachers describing what they've done in order to help that student get placed appropriately in the next school district. So just really descriptive for those students when they're leaving your school, and being able to be supportive of them if they come back with questions, and also having that information readily available if you're able to post it onto a school or district website, or just having it available to email out if a student were to have questions after they move. That is extremely helpful to our students when they're moving and when they're PCSing, as we say. The other thing with our military students is they're commonly separated from family, and often that comes in the form of deployment. And so as educators of our military students, understanding deployment and the deployment cycle is important for them. Know that, with deployment, there's anticipation and worry prior to a parent leaving, which causes potentially some behavior problems. And certainly during deployment, we see an increase in behavior problems, but really one of the hardest parts for family is what we call reintegration. So they get really happy that the family member who's been deployed comes back, but it's hard to kind of get back into the motion of things when that returning member is getting reintegrated into the family. And so knowing that there's a struggle there to be perceptive of your students, but also with that separation, when we're planning outreach events and after school events related to our curriculum, be mindful that when you're new to an installation, you don't have the roots in the community sometimes to be able to phone a friend to, get your child to be picked up and taken to a different location. So when you're planning events and activities outside of school hours, being mindful of after school transportation, and those outside of school meetings can sometimes be difficult, especially if your military family has a more difficult schedule. Not everybody in the military gets to work a day shift. There's a lot of unusual hours that are worked. And also here at Minot, we have military members who are at home for 2 to 3 days out of the week, and that what we call out in the field for the other part of the week. And so they're in and out every single week. And so understanding that separation is certainly including deployment, and that is certainly a consideration for educators of military students. But separation just means sometimes that their parents work some crazy schedules to meet the need of the military, and to be, prepared to accommodate for that in all aspects of education. The other thing that I would love to tie in here is please use your military community and your school liaison as a resource to really bolster that cyber education. Cybersecurity, information that is ingrained into what we do in the military. So we can find you some really cool and really excited folks that are going to come into the school and do a project, bring equipment, talk about what they do, and make it real, and understand that on a day-to-day basis, we have military members who deal in this arena. And so, our comm guys, for example, they don't often get asked to be speakers, but they deal with cyber within the cyber arena, and specifically with cybersecurity every single day. So utilizing all different types of units to be and just make your curriculum really hit home with the severity of what this means in the current world. So I'd really recommend connecting with your school liaisons, or like I said, with the military community near you, to bring those folks in. They're always very much willing to help out. And then I did have a fun story that I did want to share. So I had mentioned that Cyber.org and I have worked together for at least 2 years now. And last summer we did some cybersecurity camps on the installation. It was really the only time. School had closed in March. The youth programs was pretty much closed with very limited availability, all the rec sports. So the kids weren't able, as we all know, to get out and be together. So we were able to get approval to hold some small camps, and that the topic ended up being cybersecurity. So the kids, it sounds interesting. So we got a good group of kids in there. They worked on a project for a week. We got command involved. They were really invested, in the activity that we were doing and the kids' presentation, and the kids were very proud. But as from my perspective, what I found to be the coolest part of this is, one, we brought them in because the topic was interesting. So they were like, yeah, that sounds cool, we'll do that. But they were able to work together and build relationships. So back in, March to throughout the summer, we had slowed down much of what was happening on the base, likewise with the rest of the country and the world. So our kids weren't able to get out and meet new people. Well, this is also what we call, again, PCS season. So we had a lot of families that came in and never had gotten the opportunity to engage with peers. And so we were able to hold this camp, which, again, they were like, it sounds cool, so I'll do it. And there's, let's go meet some people. But what was coolest about this for me is that in talking with one of the teachers who facilitated the activities with us, she had mentioned that two of her current sixth graders met at that camp and are the best of friends. And they were the first two people they met on our installation, and were able to, as we say, grow roots here in Minot because of that. The camp that we held, their interest in the cybersecurity topic. And that was just really a win and a very proud thing for me to think, look back on, is the fact that they found a common interest. They did some activities together. They felt proud, and then they built a friendship from that. So just one of the cool things that, unexpected ways that this type of education can bring people together.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. It seems like there's a lot to be considered beyond just the idea that, or the understanding that these students move around a lot. And, they can move multiple times within their academic career. There's a lot of layers there that we need to consider when we're thinking about these students, where they are, and how they relate both to the schools and with the families, and between the teachers and the families as well, and the base. So thank you so much for sharing. You're going to get a chance to answer some questions towards the end, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the last few minutes. But up next is Dr. Rivers. He's the principal at Meade High School in Maryland. And Dr. Rivers, welcome. It's nice to see you. And I'm going to give the floor to you to talk about your experiences there at the high school and with your staff and with your students there.
Awesome. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to start back with just talking about the relationship I have with our military liaison, Miss Bolognese. And Sarah and I work together well in the fact that she is the information pipeline that I have directed to my military families. Fort Meade, Meade High School actually sits on the property of Fort Meade, and it houses not only military children, but mostly the civilian population. I think only about 20% of my students are military related and connected students. Through the relationship with the liaison, any issues or concerns that students may have, she has direct connect to me. We also have a connect to the base commander, where I get a chance to meet with him to discuss how we're doing as a school at Fort Meade, what our educational process is like and what our philosophy is like. So he often comes and visits, and I visit with him. And so we talk and discuss what is going on within the school community. And so we're trying to make the environment one that is open. We have like 5 distinct communities, with the military being one. And so one thing I like most about our school is that when you come into the building, you really don't know who is who, because our students kind of blend in together. They support one another, and they work really well together. Now, one of the things that we were working on, we just had a meeting the other day, and I'm going to invite my assistant principal, Ms. Mary's Kaya, who's on the call, to be able to support as well. But one of the things that we're looking at doing is, when we have a new student that comes to the school via military, we have people that support them and show them around and kind of escort them and be with them and kind of break the ice, if you will, to make sure that they know where their classes are. The building is really confusing and kind of hard. It's a huge building. About 2,300 students attend the school. So it can be overwhelming, particularly if you're coming from a place where you didn't have as many students in the classroom or in the building as you would encounter at Fort Meade. And I think one of the things also is that our school is so diverse, and so we're open, and students should be able to come in and find a home and doing different things that we have in the school that's designed and set up. Our JROTC program is really strong, so we support the military. Homeland Security program is one of the programs that we really have going on, that we have a relationship with Fort Meade, the Fort Meade Alliance. When they come in, we have NSA that sits there. So we have a CyberLab in the school. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that the students, when they come in, they can find a home, find something that connects them. We have high curriculum program. We are IB school, so students come in and get a chance to get the advanced curriculum. They get a chance to get the AP courses. They get a chance to play in all the different sports activities that we have. And so whether they live on base or they live off base and attend the school, we still take care of them, we support them. And to be honest, we're just one big happy community, Meade, Mustang Nation. And it's just really hard to separate in the building when you see students say, those are military students, these are students from other neighborhoods or whatnot. It doesn't work like that. They're just one big happy family, and we make sure that we try to match the classes that they have, particularly coming overseas. The transcripts will get scrutinized at the district level, then we get a chance to see it at our level, make sure we have the classes lined up, make sure we meet with parents and talk with them about what the experiences will be like when they're at Meade High School. And so we're a regular public high school. We just happen to be located on the property of Fort Meade. Ms. Kaya, is there anything else you would like to add?
I think that you pretty much cover everything. We're very excited, to be here today. And like Dr. Rivers said, we try to make everyone feel as welcome as possible. We do have student ambassadors, and it's usually ran by military students. We like to embrace them, and we try to put them in contact with the new students that are coming in the building. So when they come in, they don't feel as lost, or that at least they feel, somehow familiar, with the school and whatnot. And again, all the programs that that support not only the military, but outside as well, including the community college classes, etc.
And one thing I want to add too, we also receive students and we support them, but also our outgoing students. So for example, I had a student that is going down to, I'm not even sure if it's Fort Gordon or Fort Benning, but he's going to Georgia. Georgia schools end in a couple of weeks. Our quarter just started. And so I reached out, we spoke to the parents, it's like, look, this is what's going to happen. I can freeze his grades, but I really don't want to right now. He can continue virtually for a few more weeks to make sure we get enough grades in the fourth quarter so that we can close him out, and he would have a complete transcript and not have something that's incomplete. So we also, back and forth with my registrars, communicate and talk about how and when can we close a student out when they transfer out of the school during the middle of the year or near the end of the year.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that was a question that I have. And since we have a few extra minutes here, maybe you can speak more to that. Is the students are moving, if they move mid-year or midway through a quarter, what are some of those challenges, or can you speak to some of the challenges that you see from them exiting or entering your school, partially through the school year?
Yeah, and so this year was particularly hard because when students leave and they go out of the country or coming back into the country, they're going to be quarantined. And so we had students that were missing that time. And so we gave them opportunities to make the work up, but we also extended the courtesy of that virtual learning because we didn't want to just cut the student off. So we definitely want to support the student, they get set up on that side and then be able to engage in education on the side of where they're landing. Some of the problems and concerns that we have is just like during the middle of the quarter, how do we support them? Because we might be on a quarter system, they may be going somewhere that's on a semesterized system, or they may end their quarter sooner than we do. So we look at where they are and try to make sure we keep the best interest of the student in heart. And sometimes we freeze the grades and transfer everything there, and they would pick it up. And that would be an ideal situation, that they can kind of pick it up right when they get there. If they're going somewhere that's not really too far away, it can work. But sometimes overseas in different places like that, we do run into a few challenges, and it's a lag time of student getting on the ground, getting set up. And it worked out well sometimes with the virtual learning, but then without the virtual, when we're not doing this, it was that lag time, and we had to really kind of connect and back and forth communication between both schools.
Dr. Rivers, if I may add, our counseling department is pretty proactive when it comes to that. So as soon as we get notified that there's military orders, in the horizon, coming to us, our counseling department tried to reach out to the gaining school, try to make sure that we place students in classes that they are going to be transferring, or they're going to be easy to transfer when they leave us. Same thing as, when we're getting the students, is the same way. They're in constant communication and referencing and comparing the coursework and syllabi to make sure that we can award as many credits as possible to the students.
That's that's wonderful. And I know we're going to save questions to the end, but I have one more just for my own sake here. It sounds like you've done a really great job there at the high school of building a community around not just for your military students, but for all of your students. And another key thing that seems to come up both from Raquel's discussion and from yours is this importance of communication and speaking between the base, and the school, but also other schools and with the families. So is there anything or any advice that you can give as relates to building a community or building communication with the idea of this military culture in mind? And
so one of the things that we try to do is we say, let's communicate often, any and everything that we want to do, that we're saying that we're engaged in, we try to communicate that out to our parents and to our communities, just to keep them informed. We get lots of also information that comes from the system down to us, directly to our parents. And we sometimes go behind that to make sure that we're kind of covering our bases with making sure all of our families are being communicated with. We use our website a lot. We use Twitter a lot. We have what we call Connect Ed. We either do a voice message and send it out to the families. We do a text message out to the families. So that level of communication, I think now also with the virtual, is that we're able to communicate directly to the students in their first period classes via their emails and things there. So, or if you want to communicate to our seniors, we do things like that. So we just kind of keep that communication going, send a call home, hey, check the website for a letter from the principal or from whatever department in the school that's communicating.
Sorry. Raquel, do you have any advice to that point as well?
Yeah, I have to agree that constant communication is the key there. School liaisons will regularly attend school board meetings, and anytime we can engage with principals and with our district and with our teachers, we're very happy to do so. So if you have a meeting coming up that would be appropriate that you can include a school liaison in, do it. And because we are the link for command, educators, and families. So our commanders, whether that's our base commander, whether that's the group commander, or however it's divided up depending on the service, they are going to directly ask us questions. So having us to be prepared to answer those is ideal. But yeah, just reach out to us. We're very happy to be a part of what's going on in our schools.
Right. And so, like, for example, we're going under construction at the school. Reach out to the military liaison. Hey, base side entrance into the school is going to be blocked. Please let the families know, and we'll communicate that out. Okay, we have a resolution. We'll send it back out to them to make sure that we hit all those parents, but we also do it globally for the school. But we definitely, if we want to hit the military families, military liaison is the one that we can go to, and she can, with laser-like focus, get that message out to those students and families.
And one more thing, Dr. Rivers, and we don't only include the school liaison officer to general meetings. She also sits she's a member of our site team for our signature program. And those meetings happen every 2 weeks or monthly. So she's a very important part of that team as well.
Thank you so much. And this discussion is just extremely informative and poignant right now, given the circumstances we are in different hybrid learning environments. My next guest is Mr. James Wang. He's the founder of mLAB. And we're really excited that James is here because he brings a perspective of not just a man who's connected to the military, but as the founder of an organization that is looking to make community ties as well. There are a lot of different support systems that are looking to get involved in the lives of military students, their families, and the school system supporting them, as well as the community supporting these families around the bases. And James is with us today to talk about some of his experiences as a nonprofit organization and share with us more of some of his stories. James, I turn the floor over to you.
Great, thank you so much, John. I'm really happy to be here, so thanks for having me. Makeblab has been working with Cyber for the past year and a half, and we've had incredible support, and I think we have a lot of really great synergy in terms of our objective to do STEM education for kids in military families and military connected communities. And what I'm excited to sort of contribute to the discussion today is talking about how nonprofits or organizations can produce extracurricular opportunities for students, because most of the stories that have been shared today are talking about how to support in school. Of course, everybody in the education community also recognizes that extracurriculars and after-school support is a critical aspect to the health of a family and the health of military children. So I'm going to share my screen now. I have a little presentation. All right. Is everyone seeing it?
Yes.
Great. So like I said, I am the founder and director of a nonprofit called Makeblab. And what I'm here to share today is talking about how we can use makerspaces, which are 21st century educational workshops, to facilitate STEM education in K through 12 settings. And this has been mentioned before, but the reason why Makeblab is so excited to work with the military community is because the military community and students in the military community face these incredible challenges in their education life. Like Raquel mentioned, students in military families can lack continuity in their education due to frequent moves, and can also lack continuity in their social environment, which is equally important. And when they do move to new locations, they can often lack access to extracurricular opportunities if they end up in a more remote location, of which many military bases are kind of situated. Finally, one reason why we're really excited about serving students in military families is there's a lot of them. So there are over 900,000 students in the country affiliated with the DoD. And our belief is that if we can make even an incremental change for the student community, ultimately that can make a huge benefit in the world. So we're really excited to do that. And the way that we try to approach this problem is our mission is to try to create a network of educational makerspaces in Air Force bases for students in military families, so that no matter where a student is in the country, they will have access to a makerspace with the same tools, the same curriculum, and same culture. So they can have continuity in their education, continuity in their social environment, and just feel like they have a home away from home where there's an enriching educational environment. Great. To provide some context, I want to first talk about what a makerspace is. Some of the teachers on this call might have encountered it during your careers. It's kind of becoming a more popular phenomenon. But essentially what a makerspace is it's a modern workshop that teaches creativity, teamwork, and problem solving and resilience through technology. And they're kind of referred to as many different names in the world. Some call them Fab Labs, some call them Hacker Labs or Maker Labs. I call them makerspaces, but the basics is that they're all the same. An analogy I like to use to kind of describe what a makerspace is if you think of a traditional workshop, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, you think about power tools like bandsaws and drill presses and belt sanders. Well, a makerspace is similar, but instead of having these traditional tools, a makerspace has digital fabrication tools like 3D printers, laser cutters, 3D design equipment, electronics equipment. And these tools are meant to be able to facilitate the development of technical skills for students so that they can be prepared to kind of enter the modern workforce. And to draw the analogy again, in a traditional workshop, students might build stuff like Pinewood Derby cars or bird houses. And in a makerspace, students are building more modern projects that seek to sort of apply technology to solve a real world problem. And like I said before, the reason why makerspace education is becoming more and more popular and why there are thousands of schools around the country adopting this kind of educational philosophy is that applying technology to solve real world problems really is answering the question of how we can modernize our workforce development and how we can prepare students to enter an industry in 10 years that is going to be technology based and information based and is going to be fraught with problems that we can't even imagine today. So the philosophy is how can we prepare these students to tackle those problems? And the answer, of course, is hands-on experience with technology. And like I mentioned, there are many schools around the country who have adopted makerspace education. I believe there are tens of thousands of makerspaces now in the country. And these makerspaces can range from just a 3D printer and a library, for instance, to fully equipped industrial workshops. Although makerspaces have become massively popular, the main argument that I'm trying to make today is that almost all makerspaces, frankly, are underutilized and have a lot of untapped potential. The reason why this happens is because of something that I call the if you build it, they will come mentality. And what that mentality is that because makerspace education and project-based learning is such a new field in education, there's not really a curriculum standard. And since there lack resources for how to teach in these settings, sometimes the attitude that folks take when they build a makerspace is that as long as we have the tools and as long as we have the space, students will come and they will figure out the rest. They'll learn how to use the tools themselves. And the expectation is that's enough. While that's great, and I think that's a necessary first step, and sometimes it works out and there's some incredible learning outcomes, from what I've observed in the past 8 years of helping schools and communities and military bases start makerspaces is that this almost never pans out. And the reason why this doesn't pan out is because of something that makerspace education folks call the Keychain Effect. And some of the teachers who will be watching this call are probably familiar with the Keychain Effect, even if you didn't know it has a name. But what that is when students sort of come into a makerspace and they learn the minimum level of knowledge to be able to operate the tools. For instance, they'll figure out how to download a 3D file from the internet and 3D print it. And they can make a keychain. And that's a great first step. But what ends up happening that I think limits the depth that's possible of makerspace education is that this process of building this first little doodad is so rewarding that students will just keep coming back and they'll keep 3D printing keychains. And before you know it, in 2 years, your makerspace will just be full of 3D printed trinkets, which looks fantastic. But I think we can all agree that the real potential of makerspace education isn't to just replicate a bunch of 3D designs found online. It's to be able to use these technologies and facilitate meaningful learning experiences for students. And the Keychain Effect in the past year, I would say, has morphed differently. Some might call it the Baby Yoda effect now. I'm sure that teachers who have 3D printers in their classroom or in their libraries have seen that as well. But the solution, I believe, to this problem and the necessary next step for the maker movement is curriculum and training. And I really want to emphasize this both for teachers that already have makerspaces or schools that already have makerspaces, and for teachers who are learning about this for the first time and have never heard of a makerspace, but maybe are now considering it. And the reason why I think this is so applicable to both groups is because makerspaces are an inevitable next step in our national education reform world. I believe that makerspaces are going to be like the new library for schools. Every school is a library, and I believe in 10 years, every single school in the country is going to have a makerspace. And for us to be able to tap into that potential, we need to start thinking critically about how we can make sure that students are learning in these settings. And like I said before, curriculum and training is really the next step that we need to implement on a national scale for makerspace education. And what this training needs to kind of include is both training on how to use tools in makerspaces, but perhaps more importantly, how to use these tools to solve real world problems. And the illustration that I have on the screen right now is an illustration of the Makeblab curriculum. So our approach on how to handle this. Our approach is based on 3 different modules. In the first module, students learn technical skills. So they learn how to use the tools and they understand the basics of how everything works so that they can build pre-planned projects that are just given to them as guides. In the next phase of the curriculum, students apply these technical skills and their technical knowledge to solve a real world problem. For instance, we will partner them with somebody in the community that has a problem that can be solved with technology, like a library who wants a smart watering system. And students will communicate with the community partner and produce a technology for them to solve their issue, and then present their solution at a engineering competition conference against other students at the end of the year, both to show off their work, get feedback, and to see what other folks are doing. And then finally, our last module is once students have advanced and sort of understood both how to use the tools and how to apply the tools to problems, they learn how to teach younger students. So we call this peer teaching. And in the peer teaching phase, students learn about how to be a teacher. They deepen their own knowledge by kind of reviewing everything before they teach it again. And most importantly, they learn how to be communicators, and they learn important social, emotional skills that will allow them to be good teachers, and down the road will allow them to be achieve the highest potential of whatever they want to do in life, whether they end up becoming an engineer or whether they end up becoming a teacher or an artist or what have you. So that's our curriculum.
Quick question, James, and I think this is where you're headed. So if I am, you can, or if it is, you can cut me off here. But
no, go ahead.
You have a base or you have a facility set up at Edwards Air Force Base, and I was wondering if you could dive into maybe a story or tell about some of the successes you've had there at Edwards.
Yeah, that is a great segue into my next slide, because that's precisely what I was about to go over. So we have obviously tested our curriculum model. I've been working on it for the past 8 years, mainly in low-income public schools in California. But in the past 2 years, we've been working on how to adopt the existing makerspace model that I've developed to military settings, specifically to makerspaces on military bases. And as John mentioned, our first pilot program was at Edwards Air Force Base, started about a year ago. And we implemented this curriculum model and also implemented our training model of being able to train up volunteers on base and train up staff so that they can teach classes and open the makerspace to the community. And what we found is that the makerspace education model that we developed for public schools works even better in military settings because the community is so tight-knit, the need is so much more pronounced, and there are a lot of sort of assets on Air Force bases, which is where we focus on, that contribute to the makerspace mission. And the picture you're seeing here is a picture of our first cohort of students, and they completed our first module of curriculum. And most of them had very little technical experience in the beginning, but at the end, through building projects like custom skateboards, electric speakers for their phones, LED flashlights, drones, robotics projects, they finished the class with the skills necessary to use the tools, and they were already working on personal projects to build tools for their house and to build other things that they couldn't buy that they found to be really rewarding. And like I said before, maybe the most profound outcome of this that we observed is not that students sort of were able to achieve these amazing sort of technical competencies, which everyone acknowledges are important. But the thing I was most inspired by is a lot of the students felt that the makerspace became a home away from home for them. That they had a new sort of tight-knit student community where they could come after school, hang out, and learn things in the meantime. And I think this is best encapsulated by a quote from one of our Edwards Air Force Base parents. And they said that Makeblab has greatly improved our daughter's attitude, after a recent and difficult PCS move, the program has given her a place to fit in and meet new friends while learning valuable skills. And I think that really just neatly kind of captures the impact that we seek to make on military bases. Another interesting phenomenon that we kind of observed and we were surprised by is that after establishing this educational makerspace program, the spirit of innovation from a makerspace not only impacted the students and their families, but also impacted the wider community. During the beginning of the pandemic, the makerspace, of course, had to shut down briefly for safety reasons for the students. But something that we did not anticipate that happened was that the airmen that we trained to be volunteers in the space co-opted it and used it as an innovation center to be able to build personal protective equipment to sort of combat COVID on the base. And they were building automatic disinfection robots, they were building reusable masks, and all sorts of other personal protective equipment things with our 3D printers and laser cutters. And they were so successful that the local ABC News network actually came on base and did a story on them, which I thought was really great. But that's essentially all I had to share. And if I were to summarize everything I've said, and if you could come away with one thing, I just want you to know that makerspaces and makerspace education is an inevitable next step in our education reform. And if your school already has a makerspace, or when your school gets a makerspace, really the most critical thing to know is that it's not just the tools and it's not just the room that makes a successful educational environment. It's a curriculum and it's training. And without those two things, you're really not going to be able to reach your educational goals. And with those two things, I think you'll be able to achieve some educational outcomes that are really incredible and are going to push the cutting edge of education forward in the next 10 years. But that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. And so there's been a common thread that's been coming out through this hour, and that's the idea of community, communication, and building relationships. And so what we've been able to see is that there needs to be a strong connection when it comes to the schools and the bases themselves, and a strong line of communication as well, and keeping all of those factors in play, but also keeping in mind the situations that the students find themselves in and the side effects of those, I guess you could call them side effects, the results of the lives in which they live. And so being mindful of all of this, I would like to open up the floor for any questions. You can post them in the chat, or if there are any notes that our guests would like to build upon, or ideas that you would like to further contribute in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to open the floor back up to our guests to speak for a few more minutes and before we close it ourselves out. So our guests, James, Raquel, Dr. Rivers, are there any closing points that you guys would like to speak to?
I'll add here that it is in the interest of our armed forces that we have students that are interested in cyber education. We are very internet and technology driven, Air Force, Army, Navy, so on and so forth. We know that our military students are twice as likely to join the military than their civilian counterparts. And this, the content that cyber.org and similar organizations are providing for our students really just set the path for them to know that it's not only cool and interesting, but there's careers in the future that they'll be able to enter into. And a lot of those are in the military. So a little plug for the military here, that it's in our interest that we do have substantial engaging curriculum for our students, because we want them to know that, STEM careers are out there, they're interesting and they're enjoyable. And so, go Air Force.
Yeah, and I would like to add, one thing I would recommend to a family that is moving is to reach out to that school prior to your arrival and to find out as much as you possibly can. Visit the website and see what's going on at that school. We have about 5 pathways, and you mentioned a lot of the students go into the military, and so we have a large JROTC program. And so we encourage students that if that is your pathway, then let's talk about that to make sure that you go in and they get to get their foreign language. They get to go into the military with just a little bit more rank than a colleague would coming straight out of high school without that experience. Project Lead the Way for those that are interested in becoming engineers. And we have a Homeland Security program that is just set up on base with the support of NSA and the Fort Meade Alliance. I mean, it is a wonderful opportunity right there. We are a world IB school, so we have curriculum that is set up so that students come in and they'll be able to take those exams and get college credit. We offer the AP classes that students, again, can take and then take those assessments, pass those courses, and then those are classes that you don't necessarily have to take when you get to college. AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination. This is a program that's set up for the kind of the middle of the road student, right? Those that just don't quite know where they're going right now. So we put structures in place to support them, like Cornell notes and how the teachers are able to teach them, take them on trips to visit colleges and to make sure that all these students are making application in college. We have a student, and if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Kaya, correct me on this, but the student is graduating and was going back home. I forget which country to visit, but the council was like, okay, well, that's good, but let's go ahead and apply to college now and get your deferment. And the student was surprised that, yes, you can do that. Let's go ahead and get accepted. You go home, you don't have to worry about all that kind of good stuff. You come back and you're ready to go right back and step right into your college career and get that pathway. And so that's part of what we want to do, is just make sure that Meade High School is just set up that every student will come in and have a pathway and feel like they belong in that school. One of the interesting things I like too, if you come into our media center, we try to have a flag. We probably need to update it now, though. We try to have a flag of representation from each country that we have a student in our student population. So we want them to feel at home, and people just look around and say, we're different, we're diverse, but we're home. And we want you to just really feel invited, feel welcome, and feel like you belong at Meade High School.
That is fantastic. We do have a question, and this may be more for Ms. Kaya, Dr. Rivers, and Raquel. Do you find that cybersecurity experts on base are eager to engage with students in schools? It seems like it would be a great way to introduce students to careers in cyber. Has that been your experience?
Ms. Kaya, you support the department. You want to take that? She's the admin liaison to our Homeland Security program.
So like I was talking, I was saying earlier, we have our Homeland Security site team, and we have a group of amazing, I forget the terminology that we used, to refer, to them, but our partners, and they want to, if they can be in the school every single day to interact with our students, they would. We get tutoring through NSA. Yeah. We get internships. We get, we have a brand new CyberLab that we haven't been able to use yet because of COVID, but it's mirroring the one in NSA. So if something happened, they can come and use our CyberLab, and everybody is just waiting and eager to come and partner with us, mm-hmm. and explore those new opportunities for our students.
Absolutely. I'm having a brain cramp now too. What we call them, our industry partners is what we call them.
Industry partners. Yes, that's it. Industry partners. I forgot.
And I'll add in there, John, that yes, the military members love being in the schools. They love it. It's, it breaks up the monotony of their day, but if you're an educator and when they come in their uniform and the kids' eyes lights up and then they start talking about what they do on a day-to-day basis and how it relates to what they're doing in the classroom, it is such a rewarding experience for the members as well. So really do not hesitate to ask, because you will find somebody that says yes. And remember that cyber curriculum, cyber education is so much a part of the military that it affects so many jobs and so many roles that are filled by our members that it may be the comm squadron that comes out. It can be a deployment specialist that handles the security aspect of those deployments. There's a lot of different fields and a lot of different people that you can get into your school.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. We just got some classes approved, some cybersecurity classes approved that we're going to be offering this upcoming school year. So we're very, very excited about that as well. And like I said, we have people just like waiting, knocking on the door just to be able to come in and work with our students and help out with those classes. The other thing that we do, and I don't want to take too much time, we do mock interviews. So we bring all our partners and we do mock interviews with all the students that are in our Homeland Security program and get them ready. Some of them, they might be going to college. Some of them, they might want to go to the workforce, but we just make sure that it doesn't matter who you are. Our motto is all means all, that they are all ready for something when they finish.
I can imagine those personal connections with military personnel go a long way to introducing kids to all the career opportunities, both within and outside the military, and speaking to maybe ideas that they didn't have beforehand. There is a question for you, James. We have Miss Sylvie asked, would Makelab be open to collaborating with local Civil Air Patrol squadrons? Some of their cadets and adults are future present or past military members.
Oh, awesome question. And that's a great coincidence. I was actually just presenting at a Civil Air Patrol squadron the other day about STEM education reform and the implications in aerospace. So I'm glad you asked that question. But yeah, John, if you could share my contact info with the folks at this webinar afterwards, I'm definitely open to discussing potential collaborations over email. And we're especially interested in working with any communities that are nearby the bases that we already have a presence. So currently Edwards and soon to be Minot. Hopefully the ball will keep rolling on that. But yeah, if you're near one of the bases that we're supporting, we would love to talk with you. And if you're not and you're still interested in collaborating, shoot me an email and we can discuss.
That sounds wonderful. I'm not seeing any more questions. So with that, I think we're going to draw this to an end. Thank you so much for being with us today. To all of our guests, Dr. Rivers, Ms. Kaya, Raquel, James, thank you so much. The recording of this webinar and all of the resources mentioned will be available on our website, cyber.org, tomorrow. Don't miss next month's webinar, The State of Cybersecurity Education Models, on Thursday, May 20th. Once again, thank you to Raquel, James, Dr. Rivers, and everyone who came out today. And we hope to see you again real soon. So thank you again. It's nice to see you.
Thank you.